stuff dissolved in water in. That's pinocytosis. And then receptor-mediated endocytosis looks like this. I know that they've got a picture of it in your book. I just don't know why it's not included in the PowerPoint. This looks kind of good. This is that you've got proteins embedded in the plasma membrane. When something specific binds to the proteins, the plasma membrane begins to fold inward to bring that specific substance into the cell.
Oh, so like concave on
Yeah, exactly. And again, the cytoplasm never becomes exposed to the outside world.
And once it's in, it's just the membrane just like collapse around it?
Once it's in, it's typically going to have, it depends on what the cell wants to do with it. Like if it's a virus, this is how a virus gets in. If it's a virus, it's going to go to the nucleus. If the cell wants to break it down, it'll be fused with a lysosome.
Oh, so is that like how you have like malaria? You said in
Malaria is getting in by binding to certain receptors and
Okay.
getting the cell to think that it wants to bring it in when it really shouldn't be bringing it in.
okay.
Yep, that's how anything gets in our cell. Because think about it, if the malaria parasite burrowed into our cells by breaking through the plasma membrane, what's going to happen to the red blood cell?
It explodes.
Yeah, I mean, if it
It would
breaks,
die.
yeah,
because the
exactly,
Cytoplasm would
exactly.
remain
So
constant.
the parasite has to trick the cell into inviting it inside the cell. Will and then Justin.
What was the first thing called?
Phagocytosis.
Phagocytosis.
And how often does that happen? Like in a or
In a white blood cell, like a macrophage, that's all it does. They'll literally eat themselves to death. They'll eat until they get so large that they commit apoptosis. But not every single cell is going to commit phagocytosis. Most of the cells in your body don't need to because the food is being broken down thanks to your small intestine. So they're just absorbing the nutrients. But for like a single celled organism, it's doing phagocytosis all the time. Justin? And then Sam?
So for, like with this, for the receptor-mediated endocytosis, is that like for sickle cell anemia, it's like the receptor proteins for the sickle cell red blood cells, they're like misshapen so that the malaria virus doesn't quite fit into like the key?
No, I see what you're saying. There are certain malaria parasites that can't infect red blood cells because people are missing certain receptors, but for the sickle cell anemia, since the protein is located inside the red blood cell, we think that the sickle cell hemoglobin is doing something else with the malaria parasite. We think that the parasite can still get in just fine, it just can't survive because the sickle cell hemoglobins are doing something to prevent it from thriving in the red blood cell. Yeah, but like that malaria case study that you guys read, they talked about how some people are immune to malaria because they are missing receptors. Yeah. Thanks, man. You good? Sweet. Yeah, Sam.
What are receptors? Like they're just like proteins on the outside of the cell membrane.
Are they on the outside or are they embedded in the cell membrane?
They're embedded, but
But
what
they're
is
poking outside.
what is their function? Like,
To receive. Their function is to bind to certain things, receive them, and we'll learn more about that in chapter 11. But like they could send a message into the cell and sort of tell the cell what's happening in the outside environment. So they're sort of like relaying information to the nucleus of the cell, so the nucleus can determine what the cell needs to do to respond to the outside environment.
okay.
That's what chapter 11 is all about. It's about cell communication. So it's about starting from this little thing right here, binding to the receptor. What is the message going into the cell? And so like, for example, this is how insulin tells your cells to bring glucose in. Insulin would be like this little white ball right here. Insulin binds to receptors on your cells, and those cells send proteins to the plasma membrane to allow glucose to come in. Because glucose can't get in without the help of those proteins, because it's large and it's polar. Yeah,
Would you have my transpiration?
yes.
Yeah, for that transpiration lab, it's just like, I'm not gonna do